The problem isn't that as a woman you're not allowed to feel these ways. The problem is as a woman who's fucking married to Will fucking Smith, a household goddamn name, you gotta kind of be cautious of how you speak about your relationship sometimes. I'm gonna say something that's maybe not the most politically correct. Is anybody else feeling the gay undertones there? Like, the fuck is that, John? Nigga, are you in a biker gang? You can't even see him in the handlebars. This is what happens when you go to white school. Fuck them kids. I can see the strobing lights of an ambulance. There's blood in my hair, and I have no idea where my left cowboy boot is. Like, of course, all that happened because you tried to dunk a goddamn basketball, Will. This is a made-up story. This story is fucking made up.
Got a lot of habits. Do a lot of laughing. Chewing shit.
So I've been thinking about this book a lot over the course of the last few days, and I think I'm gonna try to approach it with more of a open mind and not look at it so much in terms of what happened with him and Chris Rock at the Oscars specifically, because I think it might be a lot more to unpack in this than that. However, if the entire book is as relevant to the situation as the first chapter was, and I can't help but get these jokes off, like this nigga really walked on stage at the Oscars and slapped the shit out of somebody. Like, if you don't want me to talk about that shit, he shouldn't have did it. I think it's funny, everybody who's still talking about it is like, hey, people still want to hear about it. Of fucking course. It's been 7 days. It has been 7 days. That's it. 8 days ago, we didn't know Will Smith was going to slap Chris Rock at the Oscars. So yes, 7 days after it happened, motherfuckers still trying to get to the bottom of shit. Yo, I heard Jada came out and was like, she didn't agree with Will Smith for getting physical at the Oscars. She's not upset with him, but she didn't agree. And it's crazy because I've been thinking that in the back of my mind this whole time. Like, I be projecting onto the feminist community sometimes, and I apologize for that. But like, they give me such a reason to, because I'm like, I'm just so shocked that the feminist community hasn't come up forth and said, you know what? That was toxic masculinity. That was the patriarchy. She never said that she needed protection, and now she's being dragged into public because of something he made. And it's like, in my head, I'm genuinely surprised that people have the common sense to not come to that conclusion based on the context of the whole situation. But damn it, of course, the public was too rational to say some stupid shit, so Jada had to come out and say it her fucking self. And I think that I feel her, but it's an example of what the fuck is going wrong with them in the first place. Cause my thing is, alright, Jada, yeah, you feel that way and you're justified in feeling that way. Why the fuck do we know that you feel that way? Who did you need to share that with that had to share it with the public? And that's the problem. That's the problem. You be coming out with perfectly fair assertions. You be coming out with completely rational things for a grown woman to feel. But at the end of the day, you just pretend like you sharing it with the public don't have no kind of negative repercussions on your husband, who is an entertainment superstar. That is the issue. The problem isn't that as a woman you're not allowed to feel these ways. The problem is as a woman who's fucking married to Will fucking Smith, a household goddamn name, you gotta kind of be cautious of how you speak about your relationship sometimes. I ain't really want to do too much talking to start it off, but gosh, that shit just blew my mind. Like, there's so much more to unpack about this situation. I'm just kind of formulating all my thoughts into one just long drawn out rant to speak about this specifically. But I'm gonna try to keep this about the book. You feel me? I'm gonna try to keep this about the book. Chapter 2, Fantasy. Now, I know y'all were thinking I was going to start this book off with, in West Philadelphia, born and raised, not with stories of domestic abuse and violence. You're telling me. I was tempted. I mean, how could I not be? I'm a make-believer, and not just any old make-believer. I'm a legendary bad boy, man in black kind of make-believer, a movie star. My first impulse is always to clean up the truth in my mind, to make it better, to shine it up a little bit so it doesn't hurt as much. I redesigned it and replaced it with whatever suits me. Or really, whatever suits you. I'm a crowd pleaser. It's my actual job. The truth is, whatever I decide to make you believe, I will make you believe it. That's what I do. I'm a master storyteller. I thought about showing you the pretty me, a flawless diamond, a swaggy, unbreakable winner, a fantasy image of a successful human being. I'm always tempted to make believe. I live in an ongoing war with reality. Of course, there's the red carpet walking, fly car driving, tight fade wearing, box office record breaking, hot chick marrying, I Am Legend pull up doing, jiggy ass Will Smith. And then there's me. This book is about me. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground is where I spend most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool. I got my ass beat and bullied every day after school. That's how the song should have gone, okay? I can admit I was a weird kid. Kinda skinny, sorta goofy with a bizarre taste in clothes. I was also the unfortunate owner of a prominent set of ears that made David Brandon once say that I looked like a trophy. As I think back, I probably would have made fun of me too. It didn't help that I like math and science. They were my favorite subjects in school. I think I like math because it's exact. I like things that add up. Numbers don't play games or have moods or opinions. I'm not gonna lie. I went to school for math for a little while and everybody would always ask me like, why math? Why are you in school for math? And that is one thing that has always been so comforting to me about math is that 1 + 1, it's always going to equal 2. 2 + 2, it's always going to equal 4. There's exact answers. There's very strict rules that you have to adhere to, and they come out to very exact answers. And I just wish that the world functioned more like that. And the reality of the situation is most people, they just get intimidated by large numbers. But there's only 10 numbers. And every single number that we're giving is just a compilation of all those numbers in different places. And when you can really get a grasp on understanding like that, you'll never see a large number and be intimidated. And I talked a lot, probably too much, but most important, I had a wild and vivid imagination, a fantasy life that was much broader and lasted way longer than most children. Whereas when most kids just play around with plastic army men, Nerf balls, and toy guns, I would construct elaborate fantasy scenarios and then get lost in them. When I was about 8 or 9, my mom sent me and Pam to Sarah Morris Day camp in Southwest Philadelphia. It was the usual bargain basement thing, rec room, swimming pool, arts and crafts. I came home after the first day and ran into the kitchen where my mom was sitting with our next door neighbor, Miss Frida. "Hey baby, how was camp?" my mom asked. "Oh mom, I loved it. They had this big jazz band with trumpets and violins and singers and drums, and they had one of those horn things that do like this." I mimicked the back and forth movement of a trombone. "And then we had a dance battle and like 50 people were doing choreographed moves together." Miss Frida looked at my mom. "A full jazz band? 50 choreographed dancers? At a children's summer camp?" What Miss Frida didn't know was that she was caught in the crossfire of a playful game between me and my mother. One that still goes on even to this day. The rules are, I described the most colorful, vivid, outlandish scene I could come up with, which I then superimpose over the reality of my actual experience. And my mom's job is to determine how much of it's actually true, and in which case does she need to do something. My mom paused and came nose to nose with me. Her gaze served as a sort of old school mother with lie detector looking for the slightest wobble in my commitment to my story. I didn't finish. She'd seen enough. "Willard, stop playing. There was no jazz band at Sarah Day camp." "No, Mom, I'm telling you, it was crazy." Miss Frida, confused, said, "But Carolyn, he didn't even know the word for a trombone. He had to have seen it, right?" "No, he just does this mess all the time." Just then, Pam walked into the kitchen and my mother said, "Pam, was there a full jazz band and dance contest and trombone at a camp today?" Pam rolled her eyes. "What?" "No, it was a jukebox, Mom." Will stood there and listened to the jukebox all day. He didn't even get in the pool. My mom looked at Miss Frida. "I told you." I burst into laughter. My mom won this round, but at least I beat Miss Frida. Will was an interesting child. My imagination is my gift, and when it merges with my work ethic, I can make money rain from the heavens. My imagination has always been part of me that my mom loved the most. Well, that and that I got good grades. It's a weird mix of love that she has for me. She loves my silly side, but she needs me to be smart. At some point in her life, she decided that she was only allowed to talk about important stuff. Educational reform, generational wealth, the new misleading national health guidelines. She doesn't entertain foolishness. Her and Daddy-O debated everything. "Integration is the worst thing that ever happened to black folks," Daddy-O said emphatically. "You don't believe that, Will. You're just saying it to pluck my nerves," Mom said dismissively. "Listen to me, Carolyn. Before integration, we had our own. Black businesses were thriving because niggas had to patronize niggas. The cleaners, the restaurants, the hardware store, everybody needed everybody. As soon as black folks was allowed to eat at McDonald's, our entire economic infrastructure collapsed." "Are you suggesting that you prefer to be raising these children in slavery or in Jim Crow?" Mom said. "I'm suggesting that if there was a nigga water fountain, niggas would be getting hired to fix it." My mom would never say it to Daddy-O, but she would repeat all the time, "Never argue with a fool, because from a distance people can't tell who's who." So when she stopped arguing with you, you knew what she thought of your position. When I say silly stuff, it makes the world lighter for her. But she needs me to say smart stuff too. That makes her feel safe. She thinks that the only way I'll be able to survive is if I'm intelligent. She likes about 60-40 ratio of smart to silly. She's the best audience I've ever had. It's like there's some hidden part of her that even she's not aware of that's always egging me on. Come on, Will. Sillier, smarter, sillier, smarter. I like to hit her with stuff that on the surface is super silly, and I hide the smart under it to see if she can find it. I like the look on her face when she thinks something is just stupid and then the smart part sneaks up on her. That's my favorite too. Comedy is an extension of intelligence. It's hard to be really funny if you're not really smart, and laughter is mom's medicine. In a way, I'm her little doctor, and the more she laughs, the more silly, smart, spectacular shit I make up. As a child, I would disappear into my imagination. I could daydream endlessly. There was nothing more entertaining to me than fantasy worlds. There was a jazz band at camp. I heard the trumpets. I saw the trombone, the zoot suits, the big dance scene. The worlds that my mind created and inhabited were so real to me as real life sometimes, even more so. This constant stream of images and colors and ideas and silliness became my safe place. And then to be able to share that space, to be able to transport someone, became the ultimate bliss. I love the ecstasy of a person's rapt attention, taking them on a roller coaster ride of their emotions locked in harmony with my fantasy creation. For me, the border between fantasy and reality has always been thin and transparent, and I've been able to step in and out of each effortlessly. The problem is one man's fantasy is another man's lie. I developed a reputation in the neighborhood as a compulsive liar. My friends felt like they could never trust what I said. This is a strange quirk about me and even continues to this day. It's a running joke among my friends and family that you have to dial back my stories 2 or 3 notches to know what actually happened. Sometimes I tell a story and then a friend will look at Jada and say, okay, so what really happened? But as a child, what the other kids didn't understand was that I didn't lie about my perceptions. My perceptions lied to me. I would get lost sometimes. I would lose track of what was real and what I had made up. It became a defense mechanism. My mind wouldn't even contemplate what was true. I would think, what do they need to hear to be okay? But my mom got me. She delighted in my peculiarities. She made space for me to be as silly and creative as I could be. For instance, for much of my childhood, I had an imaginary friend named Magicer. That's not a very creative name. A lot of kids go through the imaginary friend phase, usually between 4 and 6 years old. Those imaginary friends are amorphous identities. They don't really have any shape or personality. The imaginary friend wants whatever the child wants, hates what the child hates, and so on. It's made up to affirm the child's thoughts and feelings. I would like to get some more juicy stuff though. A lot of this chapter is just about him intrinsically and how his mind works and things of that nature. And what I've learned about people is you can't really trust them when they tell you the way that their mind works. You kind of just have to put that together for yourself. But Magicer was different. Even as I write this book, the memory of Magicer is vivid and resonant as any of the actual experiences of my childhood. He was a full-blown person. Magicer was a little white boy with red hair, fair skin, and freckles. He always wore a little powder blue polyester suit with a fire engine red bow tie. His pants rolled just a little bit too high, exposing poorly chosen white socks. Whereas most of other children's imaginary friends served as projections and affirmations, Magicer had distinct preferences and opinions about what games we should play and where we should go and what we should do. Sometimes he would disagree with me, other times he'd make me go outside when I didn't want to. He had strong ideas about certain types of food and characters of people in my life. Even as I'm sitting here recalling our relationship, I'm thinking, damn it, Magicer, this is my imagination. Magicer was such a significant presence in my childhood that my mom would sometimes set out a separate plate for him at the dinner table, and if she wasn't making any headway with me, she'd talk to Magicer instead. Okay, Magicer, are you ready to go to bed? Fortunately, this was one thing that Magicer and I always agreed on. We were never ready to go to bed. A side effect of being lost in a fantasy life was that I had a lot of eccentric ideas about what was fly, fashionable, or funny. For example, I'm not sure how it developed, but I stumbled into an unfortunate, passionate cowboy boot phase. Man, I love cowboy boots. In fact, I refuse to wear anything else on my feet. I wear them with sweatsuits. I wear them with jeans. Hell, I even wore them with shorts. Now, a black kid in West Philly in cowboy boots might as well just put a bullseye on his back. Kids would make fun of me and tease me mercilessly. But I didn't understand why. These boots are dope. And the more they laugh, the deeper my commitment to cowboy boots grew. Okay, so I'm gonna say something that's maybe not the most politically correct. Is anybody else feeling the gay undertones there? Like, Is it just me? Because if it's just me, then I'll deal with that in therapy if it's only me that feels it. But first, the whole Magicker thing, I think his description of the little boy, something started to raise flags in my head. And then I don't know if it's because of the Brokeback Mountain shit, but then to transition from that to I was wearing cowboy boots with fucking everything. It's just, Will, were you gay growing up? That would probably fit better than you being in this cuck relationship. I'm here to learn more about him and understand him. I can't be so judgmental. I apologize. I was always a bit of an oddball. Things that felt normal to me could seem strange to others, and things that other people celebrated sometimes didn't inspire me in the least. Back in the day, Huffy mountain bikes were on fire. Every kid wanted one. And one Christmas, all my friends on the block got together and we agreed to ask our parents for Huffy bikes that year. The plan was that we would all ride our matching bikes to Marion Park, a small park just far enough outside our neighborhood to feel like it were on an adventure. Well, Christmas came and Santa made good on 10 brand new matching Huffies. Noon rolled around and everybody was out front. Everybody, that is, except me. See, I didn't ask for a Huffy. Huffies were for suckers, and they were about to witness what a real bike looked like, because while they had all asked for stock standard run-of-the-mill Huffy mountain bikes, I ain't no sheep. I asked for a bright red Riley Chopper. Choppers were those lowrider bikes with a big wheel in the back and a tiny one up front, had the handlebars that stuck way up in the air with a 3-speed gear shift and an L-bucket dragster saddle, aka the banana seat. They were like the Harley Davidson of kids' bikes. You felt like you were on a motorcycle on that thing. It was the undisputed coolest bike on earth. I couldn't sleep the night before imagining my entrance. I had worked out my big reveal. I would wait for everybody to line up out front ready to go, but I would come out from the back of the driveway maintaining the element of surprise. I even planned and practiced what I was going to say when they saw me on my chopper. What up, suckers? What y'all waiting for? Let's go. And then I just ride past them so they could have to catch up with me. Will Smith, the leader of the pack, the king of the neighborhood. The moment arrived. I had been watching them from behind the curtains in my living room. I could tell they were all waiting and wondering, where's Will at? And just like that, I rolled from the driveway, handlebars scraping the heavens, pedaling smoothly in my cowboy boots. That Raleigh Chopper first gear was butter. I was the man. I floated on by, all eyes on me. I throw the nod, then hit him with the, what up, suckers? What y'all waiting for? Let's go. It was quiet for a few seconds. I figured I had him shook. Then I was nearly knocked off my chopper by the roar of laughter that emerged behind me. Teddy Allison literally laid on the ground laughing. Through his tears, he managed to say, what the fuck is that, John? What the fuck is that, John? I hit the brakes and turned to scan the rest of the crowd to see if Teddy was just busting or if he was speaking for everybody. Nigga, are you in a biker gang? Said Danny Brandon. You can't even see over the handlebars. Michael Barr said quietly, this is what happens when you go to white schools. Yo, that was on this nigga's head, bro. The fuck is that, John? Nigga, are you in a biker gang? You can't even see over the handlebars. This is what happens when you go to white school. Fuck them kids. But it didn't matter what they thought, because to me, I was hot. That's one thing about having an overactive imagination. I could make my mind believe anything. I was able to cultivate an almost delusional level of confidence. And while this somehow skewed perception of myself will often end in a ridicule or getting my ass kicked when I was young, on many occasions throughout my life, it served as a superpower. When you're unaware that you shouldn't be able to do something, then you just do it. When my parents told me I couldn't be a rapper because there were no careers in hip-hop, it didn't deter me because I knew parents just didn't understand. When television producers asked me if I could act, I said of course, even though I had never acted a day in my life. I thought, how hard can it be? When movie studios said they couldn't cast me because African-American leads didn't sell to international audience, I wasn't necessarily offended. I just couldn't understand how a motherfucker that wrong could have this job. It wasn't just the racism that bothered me. It was the stupidity. People would tell me how it's supposed to be, and it just didn't make any sense. I felt like their rules didn't apply to me. Living in your own little world with your own rules can be an advantage sometimes, but you have to be careful. You can't get too detached from reality because there are consequences. All right, so I'm gonna take this back to the Chris Rock slap at the Oscars. Yeah, fuck it. I'm finna talk about the shit. I don't care. So this is what I'm thinking. Will Smith being an actor and then doing what he did, it led a lot of people to make a connection that, like, in his mind, he probably was looking at this like it was a fucking movie. Like when you're the lead character in a movie, that's a situation where you can walk up and slap somebody at the Oscars and it's appropriate. Like that's probably the only situation I can think of that's appropriate. If you're reading a script and the script says we're at the Oscars, he tells this joke, you walk up stage and slap him. Like, So a lot of people felt like Will Smith was just getting so caught up in himself, because he's an actor and he lives in this false reality world for so much of his profession, or at least what we see, because the reality situation is Will Smith has to be a responsible adult for the majority of his life, just like most of us. We just only see him on movie screens. But anyway, I say all of that to say this. It offers more explanation when you see that, yes, it has been a thing for his entire life. It's something that he's even enjoyed about himself and looked at as an advantage or even a defense mechanism, that he lives in a fantasy world. But even in that, when you look at his social media presence, it always seems larger than life. Like, it seems so big and so fantastical. It seems like you went to camp and there was a jazz band with the trombone and 50 dancers and things like that's how you can see that he still lives his life that way. This takes me off onto another tangent. I'm gonna rant for just a quick second. So I seen this, I seen this video. I'm probably gonna put the video in here.
So, Will, you know Esther Perel is coming to the table. She's going to be at the red table. Would you say she has been instrumental in you and I redefining our relationship?
I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
If you could film me.
Esther, come help us again, please. I'm still dealing with foolishness.
Because she don't just...
Would you say that she helped us heal the hurts that we caused between one another?
My social media presence is my bread and butter, okay? So you can't just use me for social media and not, don't just start I'm standing in my house. Don't just start rolling.
Please watch us stare at the red table, because she's helped us a lot. Can't you tell?
And it was so telling to me in that moment, a couple of things. First of all, the way she turned the camera back, like she was so annoyed, like what he said wasn't completely rational and perfectly legitimate. It seemed like it was gaslighting to me. And if we gonna start saying, I wonder where Jada gaslights Will, that opens up an entire new door for what the fuck is causing this man's mental breakdown that we're publicly witnessing. You feel me? But just even on top of that, how long have we been together and famous and you don't know this? Why do I have to explain to you that you can't just fucking put me on camera anywhere you want to because I'm Will fucking Smith and these fucking movie studios are paying to have me on camera because it's a rarity? And then the reason why it stood out to me so much is because it shows that even at their big old age, Jada does not understand Will's career and how the things she does might affect Will's fucking career. And for him to be an entertainer specifically, that's mad damaging. If he worked at a warehouse, that might not be a problem, that she doesn't necessarily all the way understand his fucking job. But if you as an entertainer can't respect, cause that's all it comes down to. You're not fucking stupid. It comes down to respect. If you can't respect him enough to understand that because of your job, I can't treat you a certain way, it makes sense why she would get on the red table talk and then go back to trying to use his likeness, use his persona, use, as he calls it, his fucking bread and butter, just for her thing. You feel me? And she doesn't care how damaging it is. Cause if she cared, then she at some point, of course, the last 30 years would have learned that my husband's a fucking superstar. I can't just put a fucking camera in his goddamn face thinking I'm gonna release it to everybody. And then the thing that bothers me probably the most about all of this is that the footage still exists publicly. Like, I'm gonna put that footage in this video. Why the fuck did it come out, Jada? How did it get out, Jada? He's on video telling you, don't fucking record me. This is how I make my money. It's bigger than you just walking up to me with a camera like a regular married couple, because we are not a regular fucking married couple. He's on camera saying that shit. How the fuck did the footage get out? I've calmed myself down. It's very troubling to me. Like, his downfall isn't nearly that of Bill Cosby's, but it's just so troubling to me to see what's going on. And then for Will Smith to be such a successful, powerful black man, like, for him to still be caught up like this, for life to still take him to a place mentally to be here, what does that say for the rest of us? My consciousness was an infinite playground that I delighted in exploring. But when I was a kid, the benefits of my fantastical delusions were still far off in the future. And the consequences were front and center. Tolerance and open-mindedness weren't the most common schoolyard virtues in West Philly. Kids could be cruel, and the more eccentric you are, the less mercy you will be shown. Playground is a haunting ground where every little boy is testing the limits of his own budding masculinity, attempting to prove himself as stronger and dominant, constantly flexing and challenging other boys, measuring himself against them, and punishing those weaker than himself. I was skinny and profoundly unathletic. My limbs and my torso had a sadly dysfunctional relationship. In addition, I had an overactive imagination, and from what the other kids could tell, I lied incessantly. All this meant that I was singled out by the other boys as an easy, justifiable target on which to prove their dominance. I got pushed around, picked last for games, hit and spit on, you name it, I got it. All right, so this is another thing that it really is, it stands out to me that I just think this is less about Will and more so just like what my thoughts on this particular situation are. I think Will is just more sensitive to the typical male experience. I wish growing up my problems was that I was lanky and tall with big ears and a colorful personality, and that's what people made. Like, no, I was fucking short with a weird fucking voice, and I dealt with a lot of the same motherfucking bullshit. But I say all that to say just being a little boy growing up and like he says, interacting with other little boys that are trying to come in tune with their budding masculinity. Even just being a grown man, there's a level of you have to be able to defend yourself and you have to be able to stop people from being dominant. Oh, like there's an aspect to that women don't really have to deal with as much. And I think that causes a lot of the disconnect in us as adults in the way that we carry ourselves. Cause like men do a lot of things violently and aggressively that women would never, ever, ever do. And they don't understand those things. Whereas women do a lot of things that as a man, if we did it, it would end violently, aggressively, potentially with death. So we would never do that. And we don't understand what makes y'all think behaving like that is appropriate. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that just as our minds develop growing up from the youngest of ages all the way up to the oldest of ages, there is a certain level of physical violence that men have to be aware of that women don't have to be aware of. And I think that leads to a lot of women's issues with accountability growing up. Like as a woman, if you can't take accountability, there would be consequences, but they only are going to go so far, as it's been shown by at least most of the women that I come into contact with that need to take accountability for shit. But as a nigga, it's like if you don't take accountability for shit, then you start to build habits that will get you killed. That will literally get you killed. That's why Jada feels like she could just separate herself from this situation, whereas Will can't just separate himself from the situation, even though they're probably both equally guilty. It's just the roles that we play in society, the way society interacts with us, the way that our bodies are more like the way that our brains tell our bodies to solve problems. It leads to a situation where men have to be a lot more accountable in our wrongdoings and even just in who we are, the way that we are. And I feel like it starts at a young age. I think there's this misconception that there were some kids that got picked on growing up and then some kids that didn't get picked on that like just picked on. Like, no. Every fucking body got picked on. Every single little kid gets bullied and picked on. And every adult gets fucking bullied and picked on. And I just think that we need to understand that. We need to understand that as human beings. And until we live in a world where everybody's life is fucking perfect, where there's no violence in none of the hoods, like there's so much stuff that is actually fixable that we need to fix before we start trying to consider living in a world where people don't get bullied and picked on. That's why this whole new school idea that you can't make fun of nobody, that nobody should ever be offended, that nobody should get bullied, nobody should get picked on. There's different groups of people that like all that type of stuff. All that type of stuff. Yeah, it's cool, it's fine, it's dandy, but until you're going to take the responsibility of fixing all of the issues that lead to people being damaged, somebody's getting slapped at the Oscars. Metaphorically speaking, of course. That was a long ass tangent. It's just seeing this is just it's been on my mind because it's like the third time I've seen him describing the reasons why he got picked on coming up as his physical appearance, and it fucking blows me as a nigga who had a growth spurt to be normal height. It just blows me. It's like, no, bro, that's just a thing that happens. Kids get picked on, bro, and you made the most of it. You built it up to something to where a motherfucker like me is sitting here reading your biography fucking 40 years later. But just understand that from a more human perspective than a Will Smith, that's just a thing. You can't let beat you. It's a normal thing. It's a normal human characteristic to be able to face the adversities of childhood bullying and make it to adulthood. That's not like, that's just, one day, I was probably 12 or 13 years old. A bunch of us were playing basketball in the schoolyard. I was fresh to death in my bright green shorts and my favorite cowboy boots. In my mind, I was Magic Johnson, but on the actual court, I was more like a figure skater. Cowboy boots don't necessarily provide the requisite grip or ankle support you might otherwise find in a standard basketball shoe. I could see how it wouldn't have the grip. I would think your ankles would be fine, unless your cowboy boots were too big. But like, nah, I think you have at least ankle support. Basically, I was stumbling all over the place. At some point, the universal basketball bragging began. Everybody trying to demonstrate how they could replicate the moves of their favorite players. One guy shot out Kareem as he slung up a skyhook. Another screamed out Bird throwing up a three. But this was Philly in the early 80s. How dare they disrespect these Philly streets? There's only one name to yell on these courts. Dr. J, Julius Erving. So I said, watch out, here comes the doc. Move, y'all, I'm about to dunk. Matt Brown busts out laughing. Nigga, you can't dunk. Granted, I had never dunked before, but as soon as I said it, I believed it. As I made my way back to half court, I licked my fingers and wiped the bottom of my cowboy boots for traction. As I prepared to take a running start, I swear to Almighty, I had no doubt I was about to dunk this ball. As I stretched my shoulder to prepare for full extension, the guys started throwing out bets. I bet you $3 you can't do it, Will. I bet. I clapped back. Get my money ready. I'm in for $5, somebody said. I'll take all y'all money, bring it. And I'm agreeing to all of them because in my mind, this ball is already dunked. The guys all fan out. There's a moment of anticipation. I steady myself as the murmuring settles, and then boom, I take off, running down the court. I'm seeing the Julius Erving rock the baby cradle dunk in the 1983 final sweep against the Lakers. Cowboy boots clomping, feet flailing. I hit my stride, about to take off. I'm up, I'm flying, and the cameras are flashing, and the crowd is going crazy. And then, silence. And somehow I'm falling, backwards. Something is going wrong. Slam. Reality hits with the force of paved asphalt. I'm not Julius Erving. I am out. Cold. The bigger the fantasy you live, the more painful the inevitable collision with reality. If you cultivate the fantasy that your marriage will be forever joyful and effortless, then reality is going to pay you back in equal proportion to your delusion. If you live the fantasy that making money will earn you love, then the universe will slap you awake in the tune of 1,000 angry voices. I'm here to psychoanalyze Will, and I need to just understand that. I get annoyed with myself every time I stop reading because I have opinions, but I can't finish everything I'm going to read and then still have opinions to share. And if you wanted the audiobook, it's $16. I see what I'm noticing Will Smith is he's marriage and work. I think in Will's brain, everything translates to one of the two. You're either working for your job or you're working for your family. And I think sometimes the line gets blurred for him to where he starts treating working for his family like a job. And if you think you can dunk like Julius Erving in cowboy boots, then gravitational reality will invoke a painful and divinely perfect retribution. Let's rewind and see what actually happened. I had clumped my way from half court. All was still going well as I accelerated past the foul line. I took my last dribble. Liftoff was smooth, not perfect, but I was airborne. As I ascended, I got just high enough to hit the rim with the ball, completely halting my forward momentum, thereby causing my legs to fly out from under me. The slang terminology for this particular sporting mishap is hanging yourself on the rim. I came down hard, directly on my back, on my head and neck, knocking myself unconscious. When I wake up, my friend Omar is standing over me. I can see the strobing lights of an ambulance. There's blood in my hair, and I have no idea where my left cowboy boot is. Like, of course, all that happened because you tried to dunk a goddamn basketball, Will. This is a made-up story. This story is fucking made up. Why am I mad that he's lying? He said it. He said it. He said I lie incessantly. All of my stories, they are dishonest, and here I am. The most harmless of dishonest stories. I'm so angry that it's dishonest. Why? It's even told well, too. Like, I enjoyed the story. I wanted to point out that it wasn't true. It wasn't true. I can hear Omar's voice. He's awake. He's awake. Omar is my oldest friend. Well, except for Stacey Brooks. I was about to call you out about that because I ain't forget that you fell in love with Stacey Brooks at 7. When he was little, he was so pigeon-toed that he'd be tripping himself and falling and scuffing himself all the time when we were playing. His parents decided that he should have corrective surgery. When he was 5, the doctors broke both of his legs and reset them. Omar had leg braces all summer, but when it was time to go to school, all of a sudden he was the fattest kid on the block and the best dancer. It made us all want the magical surgery. As my vision slowly sharpens, Omar's face slips into focus. I can see it in his eyes that my fall must have been pretty bad. He isn't laughing. He's scared. Yo, man, you alright? I do a quick inventory. I can move my hands, my arms, my legs, feet, nothing broken. I muster an affirmative nod. As they strap me into the stretcher and slide me into the ambulance, I catch a final glimpse of Omar. Yo, O, it went in, right? That's the one. Okay, I just went on that long ass rant. Maybe the story was true. That's the one. Like that, I don't know if that's a fuck it. Will Smith is an actor producer. He could come up with that detail on his own. It was a fake story. Make believe is a normal part of psychological development. But as we grow up, we start to let go of our fantasy life simply because we discover that living in the real world is more valuable to us than clinging to our fantasies. We have to learn how to deal with others, how to succeed at school and at work, how to survive in the material world, and it's hard to do if you're unable to perceive reality accurately. As such, we all have to learn to make a distinction between what is real and what is not. In fact, some people make a distinction so well that as adults, they unfortunately lose the ability to embrace anything other than concrete material reality. But for some reason, I didn't go through this process. Because in your early 20s, you became a superstar, Will. It doesn't happen to people at 18. Usually they're like 40, bro. You were just famous already. Or perhaps I refuse to go through this process. That's because my fantasy life is what protected me from the world. Offered the choice between the infinite playground of my imagination and a reality filled with constant threat, my mind chose fantasy. We all delude ourselves a little bit around the things that scare us. We're afraid of not being accepted by people at work or at school or on Twitter. So we convince ourselves that they're stuck up or ignorant or cruel. We concoct the entire narrative about other people's lives when in fact we have no clue what they're thinking or feeling or struggling with. We imagine all sorts of things to be true about ourselves or the world, not because we've seen evidence for it, but because it's the only thing that keeps us from collapsing back into fear. Do we do this to Will? Like, do we concoct entire narratives about Will's life when in fact we have no clue what he's thinking or feeling or struggling with? Is that what I'm doing right now? I'm trying to avoid doing that by reading his book, I guess, but that stood out to me real quick. Sometimes we rather blindfold ourselves and take a cold hard look at the world exactly as it is. The problem is delusion works like poisoned honey. It tastes sweet in the beginning but ultimately ends in sickness and misery. The stories we tell ourselves, which are designed for our protection, are the same stories that create the walls that prevent the very connections we so desperately crave. I told myself that I had a friend named Magica because it made me feel less alone, but that fantasy was also a part of why I was disconnected from the other kids in the neighborhood. Later in life, I would invent the fantasy that becoming rich and famous would solve all of the other problems in my life. But the pursuit and maintenance of that fantasy only drove the people I love further away from me. As a child, I told myself that if I kept Daddy-O entertained and made him laugh, then he wouldn't hurt my mother. But that fantasy only caused me to feel like a coward, an unworthy son, despite the fact that none of it was my fault. My fantasy life, while in some ways protecting me, also caused me to feel more guilty and shame and more self-loathing. All fantasies eventually fail. No matter how hard you fight, the truth is undefeated. Reality remains the undisputed champ. Daddy only took one summer vacation in my entire childhood. When your family sells ice, you're trapped at work from the first week of June when you get out of school to just after Labor Day when you go back. But in the summer of 1976, Daddy-O decided to take off 2 months, rent a camper, and drive the family cross country. There was a family reunion from Gigi's side in Los Angeles. We took the northern route out to LA and the southern route back to Philly. I've seen every nook and cranny of the United States of America. We left Philly and headed west to Pittsburgh to see Mom's childhood home. Her father, we called him Pap Pap, still lived there. He seemed like a really old version of Daddy-O. Legend had it that Pap Pap would get so angry sometimes that his nose would bleed, and that could be just watching the Steelers. Next stop, Cleveland, to Aunt Tootie and Uncle Walt. Then Chicago, the Great Lakes, then on to Minneapolis and the Dakotas. We saw prairie dogs, but I don't know why they called them that. They look like tall hamsters that stand upright. Think Timon from The Lion King. Harry got a handmade drum from a Sioux tribal leader in South Dakota. He banged that thing all the way through Mount Rushmore, the Devil's Tower, and in the Yellowstone National Park. We saw Old Faithful. I couldn't believe they could tell you down to the second exactly when it was going to erupt. The ranger would point, then Abracadabra. Huge jets of boiling water shooting up out the ground. The smell was nasty. Daddy-O said it was sulfur. I was glad to find that out because for a second I thought it was Ellen. My mom woke us up at sunrise on the top of the mountain in Wyoming. We were above the clouds. This is what heaven felt like. But then we got stuck for an hour because a black bear walked into the middle of the road and headed straight for our camper. It was a park rule that you had to turn off your vehicle if there was a bear within 50 feet of your vehicle. Daddy-O slammed the window closed with both hands. It's the only memory I have of him ever being scared of anything. After about 2 weeks, Daddy-O started commenting that this was the longest period in his life that he had gone without seeing any black people. Apart from us, of course. We're black. Daddy-O was suffering from Negro Withdrawal Syndrome, or NWS, but one day at a rest stop in Wyoming, he saw a black couple driving away, and he chased them and pulled them over just to shake their hands and say hi. They thought it was very funny. Daddy-O drove all day to the craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho. It looks just like the moon, and you can actually feel like you're on it. He was exhausted, but my mom didn't want to be on the moon. She didn't feel comfortable there, so we never checked into the motel, and my mom drove us to Salt Lake City. When Daddy-O woke up, he took us to the Great Salt Lake. He explained how buoyancy works in salt water versus the fresh water of the Great Lakes. He showed us how easy it is to float. He made ice, so he knew everything about water. But the most incredible thing I had ever seen in my whole young life was the Grand Canyon. The entire canyon was carved by water, my mom said. I was in total awe, but I was too scared to approach the edge. I remember Peter Brady on the Brady Bunch also being amazed about how water could possibly make this canyon. Wow, he said, no wonder you don't like us to leave the water faucets dripping. And just when I thought the day couldn't get any better, Harry accidentally dropped his drum into the canyon. It seemed like it fell for about 3 days. I was so sick of hearing him bang on that thing, it felt like the heavens had answered my prayers. This trip expanded and detonated my imagination. Every person we came across seemed like a new and fascinating character. Every destination was a dreamland, and I felt like life was just waiting for me to make up the story. The American landscape was so diverse and beautiful. There were mountains and prairies and valleys and whitewater rivers and regular deserts and painted deserts and green forests and petrified forests and corn into infinity and sequoias or redwoods, whichever ones we saw, touching the sky, which was filled with sun sometimes and tornadoes in the distance and funny clouds and scary clouds and all the clouds in between. These were the best 8 weeks of my childhood. Everybody was happy. We were the perfect family. About a block away from Woodcrest, at the end of Graham Street, there was a known sex offender. All the kids in the neighborhood knew about him, and our parents told us never to go anywhere near his house. We rarely saw him, and he was like a ghost or an urban legend. One day I saw a little girl going up to the front steps of his house. He was standing in the open doorway inviting her in. My heart started pounding in my chest. I thought about calling out to her, but I froze. She was too far away, and I could see him. I was terrified. I ran home, up to the steps of my bedroom, and slammed the door. Nobody was supposed to go into the house. That was the bad man's house. Did he see me? Is he coming to get me? Needing to get as far away as possible, I hid in the closet, shaking. I could feel Magica with me. You have to go tell an adult, Will. But I can't. What if the man found out it was me? What if he tries to hurt me for telling on him? Go. Will, tell your parents right now. I can't. Will, go right now. But all I could do was curl up on the floor in my closet and cry. Will, get up. You have to go tell your parents. Magica was angry now. He never got angry. You have to tell someone. You have to get up now. I closed my eyes and buried my head in my hands. I can't. Just like I couldn't face my father, just like I couldn't face the neighborhood bullies, I couldn't even tell someone that somebody else was potentially being hurt. What was wrong with me? Why was I always so afraid? Why was I such a coward? There goes that word again. I just laid there, trembling, ashamed, weak. Moments passed. I took my hands away from my eyes. Magica was gone. There's a moment when your fantasies recede and you realize that you are still you. Imaginary friends or dunking basketballs won't make the fear go away. They may help you forget for a moment, but reality remains undefeated. Fortunately, someone else had seen the girl enter the house and had intervened. But what if they hadn't? I never saw Magica again. So that was chapter 2. I'm gonna come clean. I enjoyed chapter 1 more. I feel like chapter 1 was more so telling on a personal level, whereas I think this was more so telling as to how he succeeds so well. I think chapter 1 was full of a bunch of information that he succeeded in spite of, whereas this was more so the lighthearted aspect to the story that shows us how he became the entertainment superstar that we now know him as. But all in all, I am enjoying these new crevices of Will Smith's mind that I'm finding myself being able to tap into by reading this book. So I can't wait to move forward. Honestly, I'm just waiting to hear what he got to say about Tupac. And it's a shame because Tupac died fucking almost 30 years ago now. Not almost 30 years ago, around 25 years ago now. And I'm reading this man's biography and I know Tupac is going to be in it. Like I know Tupac is going to be in it. But yeah, Thanks for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, you're probably interested in this book just like I am. So, you feel me? Subscribe. See when I do chapter 3. According to my last video, 93% of people who watched it aren't subscribed. So, you feel me? Do me a favor. Help me out. You feel me? Hit the subscribe button. If you feel like hitting the notification bell too, do that. Like, I'm going to read through this whole book and give you my thoughts. Like, don't you want to hear them?
The microphone is my mistress, I head out, I'm just venting. Fix your mouth like a dentist and you get stopped like a sentence. These niggas pouting and bitching, I'm just counting my Benjamins. Ain't announcing my mission, I just come out with a victory.